Hello, everyone. We're just getting people to join, so we'll just give it a couple more seconds and then we'll get started.
Okay.
How's everyone this morning?
Well, it's nighttime for me and I'm good.
Wonderful.
Good evening over here.
How are you? How are you all?
We are well, we are well. Wonderful. Perfect. Amazing. Okay, well, thank you everyone who's able to join us today. A really big thank you also to all our speakers who've been gracious enough to join us from different parts of the world today to share a little bit about their experience with the SDGs and sustainability. So prior to jumping into our keynotes and some of the other activities for today, we'll just complete a small introduction to global schools and SDSN youth, so the organization supporting our event today. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Amanda, our Global Schools Program Manager, to provide a brief intro and go over today's objectives as well.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I won't take up too much of your time because most of the people on here are familiar with global schools, either as students, alumni, mentors, or just part of our advocate community. So we thank you so much for joining us at the Global Schools Student Symposium. This is the first year we are doing this event, and we are very excited to kick it off. So this is day one of the event, and we have the opportunity to hear from some wonderful keynote speakers. And Elizabeth, your moderator for the day for this first session, will introduce them to you momentarily. So that will be the first hour. We will hear from some keynotes, and then we will talk a little bit about sustainability careers, and you will have the opportunity to talk to about 6 panelists about their careers and their work on the Sustainable Development Goals. So we are very, very excited to welcome them. We will also be live tweeting today. So if any of you are active on Twitter, our social media manager, Raquel, will be live tweeting, and the handle is @SDGs in schools. So you can stay tuned in the conversation and share your thoughts as well. We'll also share the link for tomorrow. Tomorrow we will have the students actually presenting their work on the Sustainable Development Goals, and we are very, very excited to hear from all the student presenters on the work that they're doing in their communities, as we are so proud of those that are joining from the global schools community, as well as those that are in part of the wider network of youth doing so much around the world. We also want to say thank you to SDSN Youth, to Mission 4.7, as well as the Sustainable Development Solutions Network for partnering with us in this event. So without further ado, I'll hand it back over to Elizabeth.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amanda. So as Amanda noted, we will be starting with the keynote speakers. So we would first like to introduce our first speaker, which is Madeleine Kanga, who's calling in from the United States today. And just a little bit of a brief introduction about herself. So with an educational background in law, with a master's in international business and economic law from Georgetown University, she's currently a proud founder and president of the non-for-profit organization Jumpstart Academy Africa. So JAA is a nonprofit organization which seeks to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education by improving learning outcomes for young people, both supporting their personal and professional development. She's also an alumnus of the African Leadership Academy, the Watson Institute, and the Monetary Institute of International Studies. So now I'll open the floor for Madeleine to share more on her background and experience given her enriched professional journey. So Madeleine, thank you, and over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thanks, everyone. And thanks for the opportunity to speak at this event. I'm very passionate about education. So when I received the invitation, it was such an honor. So thank you again. I just want to start. I'm very thankful for this opportunity, and I'm just thankful, to God to be here. In light of everything that's happened. I think we just need to be all thankful and just grateful for still being here with COVID and everything, and just everything that's happening around the world. So that's something that I'm really thankful to God for. I'm also really pleased to see, the number of young people who have joined, from all over the world and are so passionate about making a change in their communities. That's something that's very close and dear to me. So back when I was 13, I mean, so I think the young people here as young as 13, and that's where I really started from 13. So my name is Madeleine, as Elizabeth said. I'm currently based in Virginia in the USA, but I was born and raised in Cameroon in West Africa. And it's one of those, it's a very beautiful country. We speak English and French, but then the dynamics growing up were a bit tricky, like the colonial history led to a lot of challenges. And so as a 13-year-old, I just used to wonder, what could I do? What can I do? How can I have a positive impact on my community? And then that got me I just started thinking, like you all were already making waves in your community at 13. I started questioning the status quo, and that's really what got me started, just questioning how things were done. And actually what got me interested in studying law was just, the culture of mob justice, which happens in a lot of communities. And I just really wanted to see a society where the rule of law was upheld. So fast forward to like 17, 18, I moved to South Africa to study at the African Leadership Academy. And that was the first time, I met young people from other countries, the people from Nigeria, of course, there's always Nigerians everywhere, Nigerians, South Africans, Sierra Leone, Ghana, Togo, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, Chad, and they're also international like gap year students. So there's students from America, Greece, Turkey, and a few other, Lebanon, and a few other countries. So that's why I really like platforms like this, which gives us an opportunity to really connect together. Because a lot of times we grow up in silos, we grow up in our countries, before that experience, I'd not really met anyone else from Cameroon, right? So when we get to meet people from other countries, I think it's something to really take advantage of, because you learn different perspectives, you learn the challenges in different countries, but you also learn the similarities. And I think that's something that's very good. So it was a very wonderful experience. That's what really just introduced me to this concept of social entrepreneurship. And I just started thinking, oh, so I can start something and then I can start a project, I can start a community service organization, something, and have that be a vessel for change. So it really got me thinking about how do I create change in my community. So over the years, I had a lot of experiences. Thankfully, I was able to move to the UK, do my undergraduate, but I still had that thought in mind, because I think sometimes we can get swallowed in trends. So I studied at the London School of Economics, and it's very corporate. So everyone wants a job in a law firm, and you can sometimes forget your vision or your passion for social change. So I was very fortunate to be able to volunteer and do tutoring. So during my spare time on campus, I would volunteer at some local schools in London, and we would mentor students. And that experience was really amazing. Again, when you have the opportunity to interact across cultures, you see the similarities and the differences are also a learning point. So that was a great experience for me. And so I thought, okay, this is really amazing. Just 1 hour a week with a student, and I see the impact it's having in this young person's life. And I've been to ALA, and we had this amazing, training in entrepreneurship. How can I give back to my community? What's the need? What are the needs I saw growing up? And how can what I've learned so far through ALA, through the LSE, and now thankfully Georgetown, how can I use that in a way that has a positive impact in my society? So I started thinking, and that's how Jumpstart Academy came to being. So I'm very passionate about education, because in some places around the world, education of the girl child especially is still something that it's not yet where it's supposed to be, right? So I know how I can testify to how going to school, getting an education, how it helped me, how it empowered me. So being able to say, okay, this is one area I think there's huge need, but there's also every time there's a need, that means there's an opportunity, right? So what's the opportunity there? And the opportunity there is to help young people be ready for the job market and be able to lift themselves out of poverty. So we have systems um, and it's a global problem, right? At first, like when I was growing up, I was like, oh, this is only in Cameroon, but no, it's a global problem. And the problem is a skills gap. So when you look at the landscape of education, what we learn in school is not necessarily what employers are looking for, especially with the future of work, discussions for the future of work and robotics, automation, and all these advances that have been made, right? The workforce for today, what we need especially is soft skills. So employers are looking for soft skills. They want to know that you communicate, but usually we don't get taught these things in schools. Entrepreneurship, leadership, those kinds of skills, emotional intelligence, so that's kind of what we started thinking about. Okay, how about we come up with a program that really targets and addresses these things. And that's where we started Jumpstart. And we've been working in Cameroon. We also work in Togo. Our work in Togo is a bit on a pilot phase, so not as much. We used to work in Lomé and some other villages around Togo, but what we do mostly is in Cameroon. We also used to work in Nigeria, but for now we work mostly in Cameroon. And we just partner with secondary schools and embed our curriculum, teaching young people entrepreneurial leadership skills. And we also have a learning center in our office space where we equip students and university and college, university students and graduates with future work skills, seminars, career building, so to get them, ahead in the workplace. So what we're thinking of, when we think of 5 or 10 or 15 years from now, we want to see young people who are job creators, who go out there and create jobs, start businesses. And we're seeing that already. We have young people who have started restaurants and employ other people, and through the funds from the restaurant can then cover their education. So we want to see young people who, through these programs, are empowered. So they start generating income. They can use that income to further their education. They're in a position to employ other young people. And, that's kind of how we think that we see that ripple effect of change. So I wanted to just spend time, because I know the key question we're trying to answer today is, how do we drive change to promote sustainable development on an international level while bringing the community closer together? So how do we drive change on an international level and make sure that when we do that, when we're doing that change, we the communities we work with are stay together? So I think I just came up have a few points I wanted to raise, and those points I'll give examples from how I applied that in doing Jumpstart. So the first thing is, and I think all of you just by being here have already done that, and it's not being comfortable with the status quo, right? When you look at something and you go, yeah, and it makes you feel uncomfortable and you want to change it. And that's the first step. And I think we have all gotten past that step. The next step is being willing to learn, right? So being willing to learn, being open-minded, and challenging assumptions. Those, I think, 3 go together, because a lot of times we assume the needs of a community, we assume the root causes. When you're trying to change a community, especially at scale, it's very important to lay aside assumptions, be open-minded, and go in just being willing to learn. So let me give you an example with Jumpstart. If I had gone initially with this idea of, I think there's something wrong with, yes, there's definitely a skills gap, my default would have been to go and build another school, because that's what everyone else is doing. So my assumption is, if everyone else is building a school, then the needs for a school. But that's not, there's so many schools. The problem is not a lack of schools in most cases. In some cases, there's still areas where there needs to be schools. But for the most part, it's the content, right? So you then, by laying aside that assumption, by being open-minded and be willing to learn, you challenge your own assumptions, and that helps you build programs that are more sustainable. And then another point I would like to kind of leave you with as you think of how to engage in the SDGs is to engage the communities you work with, right? So Jim Collins is, if you've read all of his work, I really love his books, and there's something he talks about building a clock versus telling time. And as change makers, we should all strive to build the clock and not tell time. This is the difference. So telling time is like having a great idea, right? You're a visionary leader, and you have a great idea. You want to change, let's say you want to change Kenya. I see Kenya in the chat, so let's just use Kenya. I want to change Kenya. And so I have this great idea, and let's say it's to reduce the number of people that live in slums by 2030, right? That's a great idea. So what makes that, if you try to do it by yourself without engaging the community and without questioning your assumptions, you can run the risk of just telling time, right? You just say, okay, this is my idea, this is how I want it to work. And then maybe you get a team of 5 or so people and you tell them what to do, right? You're just telling them, this is what I want you to do, A, B, C, and then you tell them what to do. But building a clock, and then let's say in the scenario I just gave, if let's say you move from Kenya, right? Then the project stops because the 5 people you were working with were just being told do A, B, C. They weren't being involved in the project. They weren't owning anything. That project stops, right? And all the funding, all the time you invested, also that's basically now gone to waste. But if you build a clock, you build a system, right, that can last far beyond you, where you're a leader, but there's community, and you enable that everyone is empowered, right? You delegate responsibilities, you make sure everyone's voice is heard, you make sure the local community has ownership. 5 years from now, if you're no longer there, that project continues and continues even 20 years down the line. So that's very crucial when we're doing and trying to engage communities and try to do work in the field of SDGs. So I just want to one last point before I end is, there's always a question about how do I have to do it as a full-time job, right? Does it have to be my full-time job? And there's no one way to do it, right? So I grew up, because I was very good at school, everyone assumed I was going to be a doctor, but I knew I didn't like medicine. So I gravitated towards social sciences and ended up now as a lawyer. But I didn't think being a lawyer means I cannot do social entrepreneurship, right? So it just, find what works for you. There's no one way to do it. So I'm a lawyer by profession. Thankfully, I'm able to work, in a field I love, and I do that, that's my day job. But around that, I do Jumpstart. Before that, I used to do Jumpstart sort of full time, right? So there you have phases where you have to go in all in, especially in the early phases. I had to go in all in, but then after, once Jumpstart was set up and able to run, now I'm, doing what I love as an attorney, and then being able to do Jumpstart and having other projects I'm working on as well. So there's no one way to do it. You're all in the right place. Just, have an open mind. And I look forward to seeing what you all have to do in your different communities. Thank you.
Wonderful, Madeleine. Thank you so much. That was very, very inspirational, very informative as well. And I'm hoping our audience was able to take some of those critical points that you highlighted. We'll give a little bit of a brief summary at the very end as well, just to recap everything that we heard. But given that we do have a little bit of time, I wanted to come up with a follow-up question for yourself. So based on what you mentioned, your volunteering experience seems like it was a very critical point in time where it helped you gain a really broad perspective of the world, really get close to certain social problems that are existing in your local community. And so do you have any advice potentially for our audience today as to how to get more involved through volunteering, how to find these types of opportunities, and how to, I guess, carve out the, as you mentioned, kind of, you can do it in your own way, create your own journey, you can work full time, but still volunteer. So, and kind of how to craft your own kind of journey for that through those types of opportunities.
Oh, that's a great question. Thanks, Elizabeth. I think, it's very important because as social entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs or like community organizations, we really don't get this. There's very few places that train us, right? Before, when I started, I was like, what am I doing? And I didn't, so volunteering is one of the ways to learn, actually, because the best way to learn is by doing. So find a local organization that does what you want to go into. So if I want to start a health program in, let's say, Pakistan, I'll find a health initiative like Doctors Without Borders, and I'll volunteer. I'll say, okay, go to their website, volunteer, and see how they do it. It really helps. It really helps to see how it's been done. You learn a lot. There's a lot of things that go into running an organization, and that really helps you. And then it really gives you, okay, it helps you come up with questions, maybe challenge some assumptions, and just helps you in when you get to the field. You're not so like challenges that would have overwhelmed you. You've already come across those by being volunteering. And sometimes in volunteering you find mentors, which is also a very good thing. Mentoring is very important. It's always important to have someone who has been there and can tell you, help you avoid a lot of mistakes, and tell you, this is, you can do this or not do this. And so I always recommend that. So volunteering is very good in terms of how to find those opportunities. So again, research, so like research international organizations in Pakistan, for example. But there are a lot of websites right now, and I know a few of them just on the top of my head. There's one called Youth Up, which is very good. There's Opportunities for Youth, those kinds of websites that they have opportunities. Just always look at this type of websites, search them, see what they have, and then apply for those, do searches, go to local communities in your area and check and see what they have available and how you can be a part. And then one last way to find volunteering opportunities is like with the world today. So take advantage of your network, right? You have an incredible pool of young people here, and with the pandemic, it's shown us that you can do things virtually, right? So it doesn't have to be in person. You can be in another country, you can do it virtually. That's if though it's possible, right? So it's always with this day and age of globalization and social media, just use those platforms to find organizations you identify with, find leaders you identify with, and see maybe where they worked, see what they've done, and then always go volunteer. At Jumpstart, for example, we're always looking for volunteers in Cameroon. So volunteering is very important.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Madeleine. Very, very helpful as well. And we see the chat is very active. We probably have lots of questions, so we're definitely taking note of those. We'll just leave them to the very end and go through a little bit of a Q&A. But thank you so much, Madeleine. And now we'll move on to our second keynote. So I'll do a little bit of a brief introduction and then hand over the mic. But next, we would like to introduce our student speaker, Vihan Agarwal, who's actually joining us from India. He's an incoming undergraduate student at Stanford University, and he founded his first startup, One Step Greener, at the age of 14, which he'll tell us a little bit about as well. So One Step Greener strives for a zero waste future and aims to combat pollution by working on waste management, recycling, and tree plantations. So One Step Greener has created an innovative model for better waste handling, which includes waste segregation training, door-to-door pickups of recyclables, and a drop-off center, and then to mitigate any existing pollution, they plant and look after native trees. Vihan has been selected by the North American Association of Environmental Education as a member of the EE30 Under 30 cohort for 2021. He has spoken and addressed many students all over the world at various platforms. And so with that, I would like to pass off the virtual microphone to Vihan as he joins us today and tells us a little bit more about his journey from such a young age.
So hi, as Elizabeth really nicely introduced me, my name is Vihan. At this moment, I'm 18 years old, and what I'll be doing in this speech would be just outlining for you, first, of course, outlining what I'm going to speak about, and then take you through mainly my life experiences and how these different things have impacted me and what lessons I've learned from them. So firstly, I think we all know why we need to get into sustainability as soon as possible, but I will outline how to do that exactly and how I did that. Then, also creating catalytical change, not just on an individual level, but something that can, impact communities all over the world. And at the end, I'll just, share some of the lessons and key points that I feel like is, any career you want to take in sustainability or anything you want to work with related to sustainability will be extremely important. So to begin with, I think it's important to know, in my opinion, what are the different aspects of creating change in sustainability. And I believe there are two primary aspects of that. One is advocacy, and the second is action. So in terms of advocacy, definitely there are two types of advocacy, in my opinion. There's changing behavior by, trying to convince your neighbors, trying to convince your community, trying to convince the government to change behavior. Then there's that advocacy that goes a step further and urges action. So these are forms of advocacy which are highly effective in creating change, especially in the sustainable world. Then you have action. And this is something I prefer a lot more because it's just what I've been doing, because I haven't really gotten the hang of advocacy. So I do more of action. So there we have two types of action. Again, we have that at an individual level, which on a large scale with many individuals doing it creates a catalytical impact. But you also have an action that's at a community level. And the community level doesn't have to be your neighborhood. It can be a city, it can be a country, it can be the whole world as well, right? And that is a community. So I'll now go ahead and talk about my experience. This speech is going to be a little shorter than you'd expect, just because I like to get to the point and keep it short and simple, and I prefer you guys asking me questions. So basically, the whole issue that I have started working on is waste management and air pollution, more importantly. I live in Delhi, India, which is, as many of you know, the world's most polluted city. And because of that, I've had a lot of respiratory issues since birth, right? I have quite severe asthma, and I have related issues since I've basically been born, and I've been in and out of the hospital. Being a football player myself, I don't like that. I want to be out on the pitch as much as possible. So from a young age, I've always realized the importance of the environment and the importance of our air, because firsthand, if you're not able to breathe, I think the value of air becomes very apparent, right? So along with that, I've always had a love and a passion for all things environment, especially nature. I'm an avid wildlife photographer. I enjoy spending as much time as possible in a few green spots of my city, or going to any forests in and around. So I've always wanted to do something to solve the issue. And till I think I was 14, I didn't really see an avenue of doing so. I think we've all been taught in school that the best way of solving air pollution is by planting trees. But when you are in a congested city like Delhi, where there is no space to plant trees, unless you have to work 6 months to get permissions and this and the other, then you realize that, you have to look for something else. And in that process, unfortunately, an incident came, fortunately for me, starting my journey, but the incident was quite unfortunate, was when the Ghazipur landfill, which is, I think, India's largest landfill, and, it was taller than all the landfills in the world at a point, collapsed, caught on fire, and in the process killed 2 people. And of course, released tons and tons of toxic fumes into the atmosphere. So I remember those 2-3 days afterwards, the whole sky was completely gray. And I remember reading in the newspaper about the fire and all of these things. And then suddenly the connection becoming apparent there, right there, that, my waste is causing air pollution, which is leading me to suffer. So once that connection was there, I understood that it's very, very important for me personally to not let my waste reach the landfill, so it doesn't catch on fire and it doesn't cause me to have to suffer because of air pollution. So if you see, this thought process was very self-centered, and I think the whole sustainability and the agenda has to become as personal as possible for you. Whenever in any field you want to work in, if it's not personal, you're not going to give your 100%. So here, because it was personal to me, I started segregating my waste at home. And that was because I realized that the best way to, reduce your waste, according to the research I did, was to segregate your waste at home. However, I saw the local garbage collectors coming, taking all the waste I'd segregated, spent time and effort on, and mixing it up again. So that's when I realized that there's no point in me segregating the waste if they're just going to mix it up again. So that's when I, started segregating and keeping my dry waste in my backyard. And I kept on storing and I kept on storing it and kept on storing it. At the same time, I put a small composting bin in my backyard where I would just compost the wet waste. So I had all the dry waste piling up, and it was my grandfather who told me, after about 2-3 months of me storing the waste, that it's either the waste or you in the house. So get rid of it as soon as possible. So that's when I really jumped into action. And I think it was necessity. And someone in the chat also asked, how do you stop procrastinating? I think it's necessity. When you put yourself in a position where you have no option, that's when you stop procrastinating, right? It's, when it comes to a situation like that. So that's when I basically decided that, okay, let's use the mother's WhatsApp group in our area. And we sent a small message on that why don't you join this other group where we're all, eco-conscious people in and around this area in Delhi. And we'd love for you to join and give us your waste. Now, the whole thought process behind taking other people's waste was very simply that I called hundreds of recyclers during that time, and not one of them was willing to take more than less than a ton of waste of each quantity. So if you have plastic, paper, etc., no one was willing to take less than a ton, and these were the middlemen, and the factories weren't willing to take less than 10 tons of waste each, right? Each category. So now, being an individual household of 5-6 people, I don't think we had that much waste, and I don't think we'd ever get that much waste in the next 10 years. So what we did was, once we gathered a lot of people and got all their waste in our home, and within 2 weeks, we had about 50 people on the WhatsApp group. We had hundreds of kgs of waste coming in. Then within a month, we had 100 people. And within 2 months, we had 200 people sign up. So it was just, it was the push. It was the push we gave people by putting it onto that WhatsApp group that allowed people to join us. And once 200 people joined us, we realized that, okay, I don't think it's going to work with me going physically and picking up people's waste. Yeah. So I hired a truck, got a space, got a team. And slowly, what we do is we offer a free pickup. We're a registered charitable organization. We offer a free pickup in over 2,000 homes in Delhi, Delhi, Gurgaon, and Noida, which are 3 cities altogether. We have more than 10 schools, offices, and different organizations who all want to become zero waste. So what we do is we basically take their dry waste, segregated. So you have your paper, plastic, etc. Then we micro segregate it in our warehouse, where we've employed women, especially women, but people from the existing informal sector in India of waste management, because we realized that if we were to do it ourselves, we would be pushing them out of the industry, and not only the industry, but we'd be pushing away their livelihoods, right? So we didn't want that. So we hired them, we give them above a minimum wage. They're not even paid a minimum wage currently. So we give them above a minimum wage, create bank accounts, and bring them into the formal economy, essentially. So with them, we do the micro segregation of the waste. So the waste is then divided into different categories of plastic. So you have your PPE, etc. And then you have your paper is divided into shredded paper, newspaper, etc. Then we store those quantities. And once we have about 10 tons, 100 tons of each different micro category, we send it to factories directly, who are either manufacturing those products new, so they can use this in their process and use less natural resources, or give it to recyclers who use it to create new products. And now we've also started giving it to upcyclers and small businesses all around Delhi who are upcycling it and creating products that create even more value. So this is basically the waste management aspect. And to do this, it was very important for us to do education, because in India, I don't think, even in most developing countries, there is a focus on waste. And because of that, we really needed to change the behavior by convincing people that it is something that you need to put your time and effort into. So right now we've reached out to more than 245,000 people through this, through, Zoom, of course, through in-person workshops, speeches, whatever we can to get people involved in the organization as much as possible. So the three primary parts of my organization, as I outlined to you, is one is teaching people education. And for that, as I mentioned, we do these trainings, etc. We also have created a free curriculum that we share with schools on, the environment, particularly waste management, but about all things environment, as well as an activity book that allows smaller children to get involved with waste and creating different activities out of it. Then that's the education aspect. Then we have the waste management aspect, which is this whole reverse logistics organization that we've set up, where we're taking the waste from consumers and taking it back to the factories to create a circular economy. And then the third aspect of our organization, which is, I think, my favorite, because it managed to fulfill that dream of mine to plant trees. We do urban afforestation in and around Delhi, inside the city. So as I mentioned, of course, it takes 6 months to get the permissions. In some cases, it takes a year or two as well, where we have to sit in government offices, get permissions, and get 50 permissions to plant a tree. So we've planted around 3,000 forests in Delhi, 3,000 trees in forests in Delhi. And this year we're planning to plant over 100,000 trees. So up until now, in the past 3 years, we've planted 3,000. This year we're planning to do 100,000. So as for the organization, this is what we've been able to create. And the whole model that we've been able to create is self-sustaining. And this was very important to me, because sustainability is not only the work you're doing, but your work itself has to be sustainable. Right. And I realized very early on, because I was 14 when I started this. My brother, who started along with me, was 11. Now I'm 18. Now I'm going to go to university. And I realized that I'm not going to get all the time in the world. So because of that, we've created a professional team. We've got these former waste pickers into the economy, into the work, and we've updated their skill levels as well, and obviously the salaries along with that, to get them into a better a better skill set and a better life, essentially, so that they can carry it on without us, right? Without us being present for the day-to-day. Obviously, the big decisions and the expansions and this and that, we're always there to do that. But the day-to-day is completely managed by them. And we also sell the waste to recyclers. So therefore, a lot of that money is put back into the NGO. And when we was a little smaller, that money was actually turning a profit. And that's what we used to kick off our tree plantations. So basically, the whole thing, the whole process, as I'm trying to tell you, is that one, you have to do something that's either decide whether you want to do advocacy or action, and start off with either. Once you started off with either, decide that you want to continue to do it at an individual level, which I assume is not what all of you want to do, right? It's something that you want to do at a community level, which creates a catalytic change, right? So basically decide what you want to do, action, advocacy, whatever it is. Once you decide that, start off as soon as possible, do it, create it in a sustainable manner that it doesn't require you. It works for 150 years, 200 years without you, because we know this climate problem isn't going anytime soon, right? It's going to continue, even though we have a small time frame to work towards to, get the global emissions down. It's just that, we need to keep it as sustainable as possible, because you never know how long this will continue. And these are things that, improve everyone's lives, that we need to do as soon as possible. And it's just, the thing is that once you have that fire in you, I don't think anyone can stop you. And I've given board exams, I've given my final exams, I've given them in the morning, then gone to the office in the afternoon, and spent all night at the office studying and working at the same time. So it's, when you have that passion, when you have that fire in your belly, I don't think anything can really stop you there. So yeah, I think I'll keep this, I'll end this now. Some final words I'd like to say is, again, I agree that you need to start volunteering, get a taste of the work, definitely. But my suggestion is, if you have an idea of your own, take the plunge. Take the plunge, jump straight in. Don't worry about whether I'm going to get the money from, where I'm going to start working. I don't have the time, I'm in school, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Those are all excuses. Once you get into the work, you'll realize there's a path there and there's a way of doing it, and you'll manage to do it yourself. So that's it. That's basically it. You have to try and create small steps at a community level. Try to create as many people taking their own steps as possible, not your own step. As that's important. Of course that's important, but get everyone else to take their own steps. So that creates a movement. Thank you.
Wonderful. That was very, very inspirational. I think as the chat shows, everybody has been very much inspired, and very, very practical advice as well. So very much thank you for that, Vihan. I think with that, we've reached our time to actually enter the Q&A. We do have quite a bit of questions, so I think it'll be great for us to actually start the Q&A and get some of our participants' questions answered. So with that, our first question is actually for Madeleine. So Madeleine, this question was, I'm curious about the journey of bringing an idea to a project, especially about your idea of transforming to an amazing project that partners with universities and other organizations. Does your UK university offer help to elevate this?
Thanks for the question. So in terms of how to start, I think the first thing is just getting started. A lot of times we want to have the perfect business plan, or we want to have the perfect idea written on paper, but you're not going to know if if the idea works if you don't put it to work. So once you have a rough idea, just do a prototype, do a pilot, and then you iterate from that and you learn from that. So immediately I had the idea, I started with actually $5,000, and that was money that we were able to raise from someone who believed in the project. So, and that's actually quite a lot. So it could be $100, it could be $1,000. Just get started. So we rallied a team of like-minded people who believed in the project as well. And once we had that team together, we just got started. We went into schools, met the schools, said, oh, this is the idea we had. One thing we also did is we found an incubator that trains social entrepreneurs, and then we got plugged in that incubator. So I attended an incubator, and then through that, they helped me build out like the business model canvas and all of that. So I was attending that and, actually flushing the idea. And then we also identify through networking. So that's why networking is very important as well. We're able to identify organizations that could help us build the curriculum for free, get resources, because when you're starting out, you don't need to spend a lot of money on you can try to find a lot of ways to eliminate costs that are not necessary. So we found organizations that could help us with the curriculum. And then we just kept costs low. We didn't need an office space. We can do this. What are the things that are essential for us to start? And then once we got what the curriculum ready, we had found a few schools that were ready to partner with the idea. We hired because we train people to teach the curriculum. We call them mentor fellows. We hired the first set. We trained them, and that was it. We just launched. It wasn't perfect, but we got started, and it's through getting started that, we started seeing, oh, maybe this doesn't work as well. We just started, and then we just over time improved the project. But the first step was just getting started. And because before we raised the $5,000, we actually we had everything ready to start. And, because when the lady who gave us the money saw that we had everything, in place, that gave her that extra, these people are ready to work, they don't just have ideas and data in paper, but they're actually doing the work on the ground. And then very quickly, in terms of the university supported, no, but ALA did support. So the school I attended in South Africa, and I think our universities have support that sometimes we don't know about. So just go out there, call the university, check the career service, just see what you can find. Especially as students, there's so much stuff that they give students for free, right? And just take advantage of those resources and take advantage of your network, right? Everyone on this platform has something that they can provide, so just take advantage of these networks and keep in touch with each other.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Madeleine. Perfect. We do have another question. Vihan, this will probably be for you. It's from Daniel. So the question is, I volunteer with VSO ICS Nigeria since 2017 and has been a volunteer there. But unfortunately, they're only allowed to be involved with their projects that fall within their local communities. So the question is, how can we get funds to execute projects on their own with the experience and skills one gets from volunteering? So he's currently working on recycling waste plastic to make vegetable garden in his village. And so he needs materials that can help build those gardens.
That's a great question. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
We need perspectives from both. Vihan, you can start, and then Madeleine, we would love your input as well.
In terms of raising funds, if I'm understanding the question correctly, in terms of raising funds, I think definitely you can look at grants. There's so many grants out there. Just finding a grant that suits. Like I did the Harvard CBE grant, sustainability grant. We won that recently. So there are grants like that all over the world. So just find 5-6 of those, apply to them. You'll get lucky with one. That's good to start off with, right?
Wonderful. Madeleine, sorry, did you have an input as well?
Yeah, so I love what Vihan said. When you want to start, like he said, free money, like there's grants available. And when the Tony Elumelu Foundation, especially like it gives 5,000 to Africans wanting to start. So that's a great thing. What you're doing it's amazing. That's something that I think it closed for this cycle, but that's a great something you should look at. And also just pay attention, to like competitions, right? Like Vihan said, like competitions, the UN will have like things whereby maybe like it's a fellowship, but it's tied. Sometimes it comes with money. And I'll try to drop a few links in the chat, but just go through those platforms and look at, opportunities like that. And, you can find, resources where you can apply for grants and get grant funded.
Just another point. Sorry, I just forgot this,
Yeah.
but you can also raise money from your peers and your friends and your family, and that you shouldn't be scared of. That should be the first step. Just ask for money from anyone you meet. You're doing good work at the end of the day.
For sure. Okay, wonderful. No, thank you. That was very helpful as well. We do have another question from Emmanuel. So how do you deal with bureaucracy of subsystems and communities when you're trying to start up these conversations that keep being dragged on for a certain period of time? Do you leave that community and find a more accommodating one, or do you persist and find other ways to get more involved?
Should I answer?
Yeah, for sure. Vihan, go ahead. And then Madeleine, if you have any input, that'd be wonderful.
I think in India, we have a lot of bureaucracy with everything. As I mentioned, just to do tree plantation, you have to sit and get 5-6 different permissions, go to 5 different offices. So I think thing is, as long as you're at a small level or you're at a community level, you can avoid bureaucracy. Just avoid it completely. Like put it on one side, ignore it. As long as it doesn't put an immediate hurdle for you, work parallelly to it. When it does put an immediate hurdle to you and it becomes like a roadblock, then work with it. So what we've done, we realized that, we have to do tree plantations. We want to do tree plantations. So what we did was, and we also raised a lot of money for those tree plantations. With that money, we didn't only spend it on planting trees, but we also spent it on one person who would just sit in these offices. And that person would just try and get these permissions and, work with the bureaucracy. And at times, local leaders are more than willing to help organizations like these. And you also have to play, and this sounds a little cynical, but play on the elections, right? So if there are elections coming around or there's something that's related politically and your agenda may help them, you can kind of, stay apolitical as much as possible. You can kind of associate it with them.
Wonderful, very good point. Madeleine, did you have something you wanted to say as well?
I think he said it all. Nothing to add. That's amazing.
Okay, wonderful. I think we had another question a student from India as well. Would love to get some future advice about how to work on ideas and opportunities for abroad colleges. So I'm assuming on a more international scale as well. And any advice you can provide in that realm.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
For sure. So a student would love to get some future advice about how to work on ideas and opportunities for abroad colleges. I'm assuming on an international scale, how to kind of potentially work across different borders if your idea or kind of job or startup affects, I guess, different communities as well, and how to potentially scale up.
Madeleine, if you want to take that, I can go after.
Just to clarify, like applying for colleges abroad, or I think I'm trying to understand the question.
Yeah, I think potentially just if your work that you're trying to get involved in, potentially what it should be taken onto an international scale. So potentially affecting different communities as well. If there's any specific advice there of how to potentially reach different communities as well.
Okay.
More abroad.
Yeah, I think one of the key ways to do that would just be like, you know, I'm seeing like so many different countries being mentioned. And then, so find synergies. So throughout the day, throughout the sessions you work, you know, if you find someone working on health, you know, I always believe in partnership. So if you find someone working in health, maybe let's say Pakistan, and then someone is working in health in Nigeria, and you find that there's similarities in what you're doing, you know, why not? You know, you partner, you can start something, and you have different branches. And those kinds of projects actually attract a lot of international support because you're impacting not only one country, you're impacting like 2 countries, you're impacting 2 continents. Funders like to see that with, let's say, their money goes farther, you know. So if I have 2 projects and one impacts 1 community, if it's not like a targeted grant, and I have another project that impacts 5 communities around the world, you know, I would like to show that, you know, with the same amount of money, I'm impacting more people around the world. So it's very important throughout the day, just pay attention to what everyone else is doing, you know, find those synergies. If I find someone working in education, you know, you come together. It may not be like, you know, co-founders. You could be co-founders where you start the same organization, but if you already have something started, you can partner. You can, you know, where, for example, if someone has a school in Nigeria and you have a project, let's say in Lebanon, you know, you can find a way where maybe somebody guest speaks, and, you know, just find creative ways to partner with each other. And when you see grants, because there's actually some grants that will allow you to apply with like a partner organization, and those applications sometimes have more weight. Also check, I just remembered something from the last question, no, the previous question. Also check like embassies, especially if you're looking to get international recognition. Most embassies have grant programs in the country. So like US Embassy, they have like a small help grant program. Those are very good. Take advantage of those. British Embassy, a lot of those embassies, they have like, and it's always on their website, they have grant applications for those communities. So you go to those websites. And then the UN is one of those places that they have a lot that goes on, especially for young people. So that's another place, you know, to also look at, you know, when they have all these awards and stuff, because, you know, at the end of the day, it's really great to give our projects, what we're doing, visibility, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to shine a light so that more people can, you know, partner, more people can support. So I think, you know, take advantage of those platforms like the UN, embassies, and just really plug in and, you know, and see what those can come up with.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Madeleine. Vihan, before we conclude, we have one more question for you. On a different, yeah, for sure.
I think, you know, based on what Madeleine said, you can collaborate as much as possible. Look for collaborations. And I wouldn't say just in the field that you're already working in, but look at collaborations in different fields. Now, obviously, this is in India itself, but you have an access to such a platform. So obviously, you can do this internationally as well. We had collaborated earlier where we had a lot of, you know, corporates working with us who were also garment manufacturers. So they had, you know, the waste material of the garments left, and we tied up, and this was cotton, and we tied up with health and sanitary NGO in another part of India where they were creating sanitary pads out of those waste garments. So, and they were buying those garments for a lot of money. And we facilitated the transport of those garments, that garment waste from Delhi to that place in Rajasthan. And that collaboration actually created a lot of impact. So these are small things. If you can find and create a partnership or an impact that's in a practical way creates change, do it.
Okay, wonderful. And yes, one last quick question before we conclude and actually move into our panel discussion, where again, we'll have more opportunities for questions, and then we'll go into our breakout rooms as well. But one last question is around for, I guess, going into a startup or taking on new work, there's particular skills that you may need to learn. And so when you were in school, were there any particular courses that really helped drive or set the foundation for yourself to be able to be better prepared for actually starting work or starting a startup or getting more into volunteering? Or were there ways throughout your kind of opportunity that you reached out to learn a little bit more, and what those resources were to get those skills that you may potentially need to potentially operationalize a startup, for example, and think about all the logistics? This may be stuff that you learned in school, but there could also be potentially other resources as well.
So I think very honestly, I didn't really have any courses or anything that I learned from. I just kind of jumped into it and then learned along the way. But definitely there were things that I was really curious about, and I would just research about those on YouTube or Instagram. So one was systems engineering and like creating systems particularly. And that was especially important to me, and learning about how to create sustainable systems. So this was just YouTube and listening to a lot of YouTube and economics and stuff like that. I think looking at the economic side of sustainability is important. So therefore, go ahead and do as much research on that as possible. And simultaneously, I think, there was a couple of entrepreneurship courses, I wouldn't say, but like definitely I just relied on YouTube. So entrepreneurship videos on how different people started their journeys. There's a podcast of how I built this. And, these are companies they've built, but those are a lot of the lessons you can apply to any sustainability organization.
Okay, wonderful. So with 2 minutes left, we'll just conclude. Thank you both very much for all your advice, your personal experience as well. I think everybody in the audience definitely has at least one takeaway. I personally have quite a lot. So kind of what we heard from Madeleine, really looking at the root of a problem when you're trying to define a solution, building a clock versus telling time. So being able to build a system, set that foundation, really being able to take ownership for the solution you're trying to create. And there's no one way, right? Find a way that works for you, craft it in a tailored way that will work for your way, and be most successful, because again, it's tailored to your personal journey. And also what we heard from Vihan today as well. So really trying to decide between advocacy or action and being able to jump full force into one of them. And then changing personal behaviors can also make a really large impact on the broader community as well. It can all start very small, but then make a larger impact. And then by understanding your own impact and what really motivates you and drives you, you can really start to take action. So kind of two key terms we've heard today is getting started and take the plunge. So hopefully those are really big key takeaways we can take away from today. Any questions that didn't get answered, again, will be addressed potentially in the panel that's coming up shortly, or in the breakout sessions where you'll get to be more one-on-one with the speakers. But now, yes, we will be moving into our panel discussion, which will be moderated by Yemisi, my colleague. So I'll hand over the floor to her. And thank you very much again for your participation and your speeches.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that awesome motivation. And thank you, Madeleine and Vihan, for your very inspiring note on this particular topic. And I know personally, I've gotten a lot from that. And I also know that the students have gotten enough from that, and I will engage. So quickly, we'll move to the next. And we have two strategic sessions that's going to hold. The first is with 4 of our panels, experts in different sustainability fields, such as engineering, diversity and inclusion, energy, clean technology, food security, equitable supply chain, and sustainable fashion. It is so full, and they will share their experiences in this field and how you as a student can start early to learn about these fields and how to get yourself involved in these different sustainability careers. So the aim of the first session is to acquaint yourself with the different careers and expert field experience. And afterwards, we would have a breakout session where you can join any of the groups of sustainability careers you're interested in and ask direct and specific questions to our panels and speakers. So it is going to be very interactive in the second session, so you can feel free to start putting down your questions as much as possible and get ready to engage with the panels during the breakout session. So on that note, I would like to introduce first of our 4 panel quickly. And the first person I'd like to introduce is Mike Vindmüller. Mike, you're welcome. It's good to have you here. Okay, so just shortly, Mike is the program manager at the New York-based Institute for Developing Across Differences, IDD, and she organizes conferences on intercultural communication, diversity and inclusion, global learning, global competence, and she's also a part-time international and cultural policy officer at the University of Groningen. And Mike is very fascinated about cultures and their influence on human behavior, and she's passionate about bringing people together through improved sustainability and intercultural collaborations to promote intercultural competency development. So basically, Mike will be talking about diversity and inclusion because it is a blooming aspect of sustainability practice, and she will put us through how you can develop a career in that aspect. Also, we'll have Audrey Machi. Audrey, it's good to have you here. Audrey is keen on developing solutions to a healthy world, and Audrey deeply believes that sustainable development is only possible if we shift our consumption and production patterns to more sustainability ones. So she's passionate about promoting the idea of sustainable cities and the limitless impact on the future generations and the achievement of SDGs at large. So she is the founder of Outgoing Consulting, and the business helps to help organizations to perform better in adopting sustainability practices in their daily routines. And she hopes that by initiating the green awareness and workplace that people can get involved in sustainable lifestyle. And so Audrey will be talking to us about developing your career in clean water, food security, and the environment in general. And then quickly we have Collins Manyasi also as an expert speaker. Collins, it's good to have you here with us today. Okay, yes. So Collins is a researcher in Nairobi, Kenya, and he's the program coordinator at Nasaru, a woman-led NGO in Kenya. And he has over 8 years experience in research and has been coordinating projects around climate change in adaptation fund program at Nasaru. He's been instrumental to the development of adaptation and village model as a sustainable women-led framework for rural climate action in Kenya. And he also served with us at the global schools as an SDGs advocate and later as a mentor to the advocate. So Collins holds consultancy positions with several NGOs and CSOs. And his interests are within the areas of gender and climate change, renewable energy, technologies for rural development, youth, and innovation. So Collins is a guest speaker for developing career in climate action with focus on clean energy. And so we would also have joining us later, I think, Sam, who will also be talking to us about sustainable fashion. But yeah, Sam will be joining us later, and we could have you all just quickly introduce yourself to us, and we'll start with knowing a little about yourselves and your career journey. So first we'll start with Mike, and then we'll move to Collins, and Okay, okay, Sam is here with us. I will just quickly introduce Sam before we move forward. Sam, it's good to have you. It's good to have you, Samantha Vidic. Samantha Vidic is the Strategic Engagement Project Manager at Transparent Team. She develops strategies and works with partners for the remediation of human and labor rights violation in global supply chains. And Samantha was also most recently working with the United Nations as a policy specialist and a regional coordinator for Southeast Asia and the Pacific. She was previously the lead researcher for Project Just, investigating the social and environmental impacts of leading fashion brands, including the analysis of labor standards, child labor policies, and environmental impact. She was also part of the team focusing on sustainability standards in the International Trade Center at the WTO and the UN. So she's a TEDx speaker and has been involved in many communities and research groups on labor, human rights, from a project on protective equipment for tannery workers to local events for a fair trade town group. Samantha graduated with an honors BA from McGill University in International Development Studies and has a master's in global affairs from the Monk School of Global Affairs at the University of Toronto. And Samantha will be talking to us about how to develop a career in the field of equitable sustainability chain and sustainable fashion. So it's good to have you here once again. So we'll just have you all tell us a bit about yourself, your experience in the field, and then we'll go from there. So we'll start from you, Mike, and then Collins, and Audrey, and Samantha. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So let me introduce myself. My name is Miekenike Windmüller. That's how my mama pronounced it. Everybody calls me Mike, who meets me in any international context. So that started already in Germany. Don't worry about it at all. Yeah, and I'm now in Holland, in Groningen, on my houseboat at the moment. It's the very Dutch life. Originally, I'm from Frankfurt am Main in Germany. And a bit about myself. So this morning I had pancakes, which is my all-time favorite, just to have something private out here. But I think the reason why we're here, like to describe how did we get into the positions career-wise that we are in is for me funny, because when you reached out, I realized, just reflecting on my own career journey, let's say, until now, still young, but for me, it was really a matter of time, that time sorted everything out for me, even though and that's a very cliche-like thing for Germans, to be very structured and very clear on this is the goal, we do this, and then we do this, and then this is the solution, and we follow rules, like since we are kids. And we set rules for ourselves and so on. And I realized that I was a bit different in some senses when I was still in high school and discovered that I would love to go abroad, and nobody else was in that age already talking about, like, no, I want to be alone, I want to go abroad. And that was something, and I'm telling you this now before I come into my current role, because I think this was super important for me to realize much later on, after some time, that my hobby, that going abroad, being with people that have very different lifestyles and daily habits, different food, different music, different dancing, was for me something mind-blowing. And I felt so at home there, being overwhelmed with all this new communication styles and behavior. It was all new to me. It was different than at home. It was super exciting for me. And I did my bachelor in arts, culture, and media, focusing on cultural entrepreneurship, cultural education, but I still hadn't figured it out really. And then I came to my bachelor thesis, and I wrote about music projects, how we can, through musicking, actually build empathy and pro-social behavior between people that come from conflicting cultures. And that's how I found my way, more or less. I had another gap year after my bachelor's, after that thesis, and realized there's anthropology and there is international studies, and realized that a hobby can actually be leading me into a career path. And that's how I then signed up for the Research Master Cultural Leadership, and really actively did research on this intercultural, global interactions and communications. I would like to leave this as my intro because otherwise we'll go on and on.
Your colleagues.
Okay. Hello, guys. Thanks, Ojo. I feel like you already had my own introduction done. But just briefly to introduce, my name is Collins Manyasi. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. Just to shoot back maybe to reflect on my career path, which is still in progress, is that in 2017, I happened to register for the SDG Academy online program for the climate change action course. It was a very elaborate course for us, and I remember after the course, we had some engagement with some of the online lecturers, and we had this challenge that what is it that we can actually do in our local areas, in our specific countries, to put to practice what we had learned. And so I went online to search around what are these NGOs, what is this climate change. Of course, I had a background in science. So I happened to find this actually a community-based organization. I gave a call to the director, and it all started by a small article that I did to feature that particular organization in terms of the work that they are doing. So they were working with the women groups, empowering women and girls. And this was in a community that I would also say that is an indigenous community. So when this particular article came out and I shared with the director, we had been talking for almost like 6 months. So she said, okay, well, Collins, now I think it's the high time we meet. So I think it's Madeleine who had mentioned when I came in a bit late about the volunteer. So that was what I did. I gave my time to volunteer to just help them do the programs, fundraising strategies. And during that time, they had just started the first phase of implementing the Adoption Fund program. Of course, it was part of the organization in Kenya, the only women organization that also got a chance to be part of the implementing entities. So that's how I started, and 4 months into that particular volunteering project, so I have now picked to coordinate the project for the organization, working directly with now the government stakeholders. So that's briefly my my journey, but much of my work into climate change, renewable energy, has been majorly on rural community. So it's like this is science in terms of research, but how do the local community, the indigenous community, interpret that knowledge? So it has been about how we break down those knowledge to a language that the community in the rural areas can understand. How do we learn from the indigenous knowledge, incorporate into science to, yeah, to make sure it's sustainable. So I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for that very old way.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Audrey Machi from Cameroon. Present myself. Basically, I am a civil and hydraulic engineer. This is what I study as a profession, but I may say my journey is quite bizarre because despite the fact that I really love this the engineering work I was doing a few years ago, I also discovered during my work that I have a profound issue with the way we were consuming resources as employee and as businesses, because I had the opportunity to work in several businesses, and then this was always like an issue for me, the way we were consuming resources in the enterprises or even in different organizations we were working with. So I then discovered that I am passionate about responsible consumption in production. And this is why a year ago I founded Dream Consulting, which is a business that that aim to really help and accompany companies and organizations to try to integrate sustainable consumption in their both their daily routines and even in their development strategies. Because I believe that by working with companies and organizations where I found that employees were not aware of the fact that it is important to consider our resources. I also found that when people are educated on different ways to consume sustainably, they also bring that in their homes. So if we start in companies or in organizations, people will bring those best practices in their homes. So briefly said, this is me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, over to you, Samantha.
I'm up. Hi, everyone. I just want to say it's an honor to be here. I can see from the chat that there's some really interesting people online, and I'm so happy to have the chance to speak with all of you. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what I do, and then we'll really go into how I got here. So I work at an organization where we look at the social and environmental issues that are happening in the production of clothing. So the clothing that we wear every day. When we think about where it came from and who's actually making it, unfortunately, there's a whole lot of issues, and there's a lot of people who aren't paid what they're supposed to be paid, who aren't treated like they're supposed to be paid. And if you know the term sweatshop, they're working in sweatshop conditions and they don't have the freedoms. Sometimes there's also child labor. So people who are very young are forced to work in factories to make our clothing. For me, I'm very interested in labor rights, human rights, making sure that people can access things that, some people would take for granted, or, the freedoms that a lot of people have and all people should have. So my journey to get here was a bit of a funny one too. I mean, I guess I remember when I was younger and my dad said, I think what you want to do is it doesn't exist yet. I think that's why we can't put a name to it. It's not as easy as a doctor or a teacher or a lawyer. So I actually, I went to university and I studied international development studies. And I didn't realize that was even a possibility. When I went into university, I looked at all the different options. I looked at the courses and I thought, oh my gosh, this one is so interesting. Every course that was listed, I just thought was so interesting. And then it helped me just to learn about the rest of the world in general. I first came along looking at labor rights in global supply chains through learning about the concept of fair trade. And at the time I was studying international development. And so there were a lot of solutions. We were learning a lot about things people did wrong. But I was really interested in smaller projects where there were a lot of winners on either side. And when I learned how people were treated making not just clothing, but a lot of the things, that we make, eat, drink every day, it really bothered me how people were being treated. So honestly, I had to really learn a lot about this field myself. My family members, my friends, their parents, I didn't know anyone doing this type of work. And I really had to figure it out for myself. And so I basically, since I knew what I was interested in, I just kept going to events or looking up things or writing my papers when I could choose the topic on these types of issues. And I kept learning more and more and more. And then it was really when I had to get a master's degree in order to really be able to break into this field. And I had an internship, which really kind of opened my eyes to how different things work in this field. But I always say it started like, I remember I had a pencil when I was 5 years old. It said made in China. I thought it was the coolest thing. And then somebody said, everything's made in China these days. And I thought, how is that possible? So for me, it was all of these courses I learned in university, driving myself, but really it's taken me a number of years and a number of different positions to get exactly where I want. So I just say, stay focused on what you want, what really drives you, and then you'll get there. So I think it's really important to pay attention to what issues really touch you, what issues really make you feel very driven.
Thank you so much. I don't know if it's my network or you're still talking, just to be sure. Hi, Sal.
I've finished. Yes.
Okay.
I've finished.
Thank you so
Sorry,
much.
was the connection not great?
Yeah. Okay, so just quickly, I will go ahead and ask the next question, and that is, what steps along the way do you think helped you to achieve your current position or help you discover what exactly it is you wanted to do? I know some of you have mentioned that along the way, I mean, it wasn't just linear, it wasn't just so straightforward, and you've mentioned one or two things, but what in your own opinion could you say were, okay, some of the steps that maybe helped you figure it out easily? So I'll start with Sam and then just go over like that to Audrey and to Collins and then end it at Nick. Okay. Yeah, Sam.
Okay, I hope the audio is better. I just changed networks. So
okay, yeah, it's better.
Okay, so one of the things that helped me was something random. Like I said, I just always tried to put myself in situations where I could meet interesting people and where I would kind of be forced into like, this is what I'm interested in. So if I put myself in rooms with other people who are interested in the similar things, I can learn from them, I can meet them. So at one point I was working, I was looking for a job and I couldn't find a full-time job. So I was working in a direct trade shop that sold things from all over the world. And one of the customers, she was looking at a necklace and I was telling her not just about the necklace and the stone, but the community that made it and the whole story and why it was significant to the people who made this necklace. And she looked at me and she said, I'm going to do something I never do. I'm going to tell my boss about you. And I said, who's your boss? And it was a professor at this university who's doing all of this great research work. I started doing research for them. And 3 years later, I happened to go back to school and it was the same university where that professor taught. So sometimes, even if you're in these situations, your passions can kind of come through. And I had people say, are you giving up on this trade thing? I don't understand what this trade thing is. And, people making stuff, what is this? But if you stick with what you know is really interesting to you and what is really a useful thing, like a useful topic for you to be a part of, then I think that you can get there.
Thank you. That was so succinct. Okay, over to you, Colin.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Ojo. I think just like Samantha has said, I think for my case, it was a very deliberate step of faith because even as I said before, the organization that I picked to volunteer was out of the city. I was staying in the city, it was out of the city. So it was a way that I have to travel out of the city, sometimes come back. sometimes have to spend like 3-4 days in the field with women groups in the rural. Number two is because of I think the challenge that we had already been given with the knowledge. So if you have some knowledge with you, then what do you do with the knowledge that you have? So I think for me that was a personal challenge. That's, yes, I've been challenged, have something in my pocket, the knowledge that I've gained. So how do I bring it out there? Just maybe before that kind of engagement, I had always had a passion to do with the environmental issues. So, and I understood that for me to be able to tap into the networks, then you have to be in the right place. Even if it's not the right place, just hook yourself with someone or a group that is driving a particular agenda that you are passionate about. So I think I would say that sometimes it just takes a step that you have to jump and then learn to swim by slowly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Collins. Over to you, Audrey.
Okay, as I said in my introduction, my journey, and you see my journey through sustainability really began when through my engineering studies and my experience as an engineer in different companies, because I work in I have an experience in several countries across Africa. I work in Benin, in Côte d'Ivoire, Mali, Burkina Faso, and I may say the issue was the same. As I said, it was that the way we were behaving as employees or as organization or businesses were really not aligned with any sustainability goal or any sustainable development vision. So that is why I developed the need to contribute to help companies to be more sustainable and then reduce their carbon footprint. This is because I deeply trust that by initiating the green awareness in the workplace, many people as possible would be involved as ambassadors for a sustainable lifestyle in their families and in their communities. Because I think sustainability is the challenge of our generation, and it is not something that can be achieved by a person. It's something that we need to do all together. So yeah, this is the thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Audrey. Nick?
Yes. Yeah, regarding your question, I think what for me was what led me here also, and what helped me was a lot. Okay, so I think it started when I was still in high school with this general feeling of, okay, the world is going down, we have climate problems, we have power problems, we have poverty problems, all those problems, how am I able to do anything? And then me growing up in a city where everything was fine, you know, in that little bubble where, okay, I have my food, all fine. But with me going abroad and realizing more and more how unfair this world is. And I felt really, really powerless and helpless because I didn't know what can we do. And I was so young and I was like, this is impossible. As soon as I'm 60, the world is... And then for me, at some point, I mean, you just finish high school, you do what you like to do. I didn't know that this could be a career or anything. I just thought I would do this next to my studies because everybody expected me to do studies, be the first girl in the family to do just the studies. Doing all this, I realized that actually there are certain things that I'm really good at, like connecting or feeling at home at other people's houses and making myself useful and over helping them with whatever they have, connecting and building relationships. And then with this curiosity that I found that I could live at in research, just looking at the theories, connecting with other researchers, I realized that actually as soon as I finished my studies, and already while doing it, I could actually put this talent or what comes natural to me, my hobbies, into practice for something good, in the sense of what we're doing here, that there are people curious about certain common things, and we connect and we try to learn from each other. Some are older, some are younger, some are from here, some are from there. And I think this is where I found my purpose, that I at some point, but it really took some time to realize, to connect the dots, that this helping others to connect better helps us in so many worlds, fields, countries, globally, that this is something where I felt like, okay, it's a little part only that I'm doing here in my scope, but if everybody else does it, and if I can manage to spark one interest in somebody else to do the same, we actually can start something meaningful.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So on a more practical note now, let's talk about your careers. What does it look like to you and the everyday? Like, what do you do in practicality, and what are those possibilities available in your career? Yeah, I think personally I'd like to know that too. So I will start from Nick and then go to Audrey and Collins and then Samantha.
So your question is how my everyday life would look like work-wise?
Yeah, like the career, what are the options? What is it like? Okay. What do you do? Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think for me it's interesting to be asked that now, because now I feel like I finished my studies officially last summer. So I had 1 year of just work experience without the studies. For me, my work really looks like I have this one institution that I work for. It's the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. I'm in the internationalization office, and there I can help the institution to get better connections, cooperations, and agreements with other higher education institutions. This is super important for me because I feel the more exchange among staff and students we can create, the better, because the more people have intercultural connections and competences developed, the better for all of us, because the world comes closer together. That's what I do on my one side job. On the other side, I'm helping this institute in New York to build a program where researchers from the field of global learning, diversity and inclusion, intercultural competences, to connect with multipliers. That can be coaches and trainers or people in HR in any sort of private sector institution. And they are exchanging their knowledge and their insights from the practice that they have. And I'm the one who is managing the program, so I'm just bringing the people together. I'm not working on the content. I'm just there to say, you know this, you have experience with this, maybe you should talk. And I'm doing this remotely because I really like to be on the road. And for me, I'm always the happiest when I'm somewhere new, meet new people, and then do also my stuff, connect virtually with my jobs, but to have this newness in my everyday life, to get my coffee at the corner and the corner looks different all the time is my thing. So that's what it looks like for me.
Okay. Awesome. Audrey, I don't know if you're still here.
Yeah.
Okay.
To put it really, really simple, I started with 5 points when I'm talking with companies, the way they can reduce the waste in their daily operation. We work on paper use, how to reduce the use of paper in the company. So this concern all aspects connected to print, so to printing. Then we have the plastic, because here in our context, many, how will I say it, our daily life is much more connected to plastic, single-use plastic. So we try to figure out how the company can reduce the use of plastic in the companies and adopt reusable items instead of single-use items. We also work on the energy aspect of the company, how the company can reduce its consumption of energy as well as water. And the last thing is the global waste management is apart from plastics, because companies most of the time produce waste, and then we depending on the type of the company, we design a waste management a waste management, I may say, routine, or something related to waste management in order to make it more sustainable. And when we finish all this, we then it's like most of the time it's like we force companies, but we insist on the fact that each of them must have a sustainability strategy, how they plan to develop the company and their business in a sustainable way. And we help them to try to write something. It's quite a little bit difficult now, because most managers think that this is something that will cost them money, that will be that will make them spend more money, and they don't see the direct release. So sometimes they don't write, but we really insist on this, because we think that we can work on the daily operations, we can work on reduce plastic, all of this stuff. But if the company don't have a global view of their sustainability strategy, it's like something we do today, and then tomorrow when we are not around, nothing will continue. So this is the thing. Thank you.
Wow, quite interesting. Thank you. Colin, it's over to you.
Okay, thank you, Oja. I don't know whether I'm having a problem with the internet. Am I clear enough?
Yeah, you are very clear.
Oh, okay, thank you. So, I mentioned much of my work is with the communities. So, it's being in the rural communities, getting the voices directly from the women. As I mentioned, it's like a women-led organization. I'm the only man, so to get to understand what are the issues that are affecting the women and girls, and of course the men and the youth. Also be able to coordinate now with the stakeholders and then the government, who are now like the national implementing entities, get to share the program, coordinate the activities on the ground, and be able to communicate that to a way that the community can understand. I think the only most important thing that also I would want to share is that in most cases, when we discuss the climate science or the debate, it's very hard when you go to the rural communities for them to be able to get the science aspect of it. So you have to get the information from what they understand, uh, even historically. So they're able to even guide you in terms of some of the plans that we undertake for those particular programs. So basically, that's purely what I do for that particular program. On the other flip side, if I'm not doing that, so I run a startup for innovators. It's called Vijiji Hub. So where we have trying to just identify the hidden, innovators in the urban slums in Kenya and rural areas to be able to showcase their talent and promote their businesses aligned to SDGs. So far, it's a good thing to learn from them. So thank you.
Thank you so much for this.
Hi, thank you for posing this question because I've started my job. I've only been in my job for about 6-7 months now, and I love what I do on a day-to-day basis, and I'm very happy to be able to say this. So with my last job, it was a very interesting job. It was on malnutrition and hunger programs, and my specialty and what I've been working on for much longer is labor rights, so worker rights, especially in global supply chains, and that's what I do now. So we actually have a team, an investigative team, and they gather evidence, information about what realities are facing workers every day. So some of the other past work I've done, I had to rely on research reports from other organizations, but we actually have new, fresh information that we can share with people. And specifically, I share that information with mostly clothing brands and their investors. So I have so a lot of my day I spend drafting, so it depends. We go in project cycles, so it's always different depending on where we are with this particular project. But right now in a project, we've already done the investigations, we have all the information, and I need to write this information, package it in a way that is very compelling so that I can tell people this is exactly what's happening in the factories where you are making your orders for clothing. So I spend my day trying to make the information very clear, very correct, very accurate, but also very convincing. On occasion, I also read, not on occasion, I also have information that comes directly from the different workers who are in the factories. So whether it's interviews or photographs, anything that really tells us what life is like on the ground. And sometimes I have to review this information and organize this information in different ways. We also have, I'm always very happy when we meet with other organizations. So I talked about really following what you're interested in and, making sure that you're in the room with these people, but kind of figuring out what organizations do you think are super cool. So I was doing this, I followed them on LinkedIn, I looked at their websites when they'd have a new report, when they do a cool new project, I would figure out who I thought was really great and doing really interesting work and follow them. And now in my current job, I get to have meetings with them and I get to discuss how can our work and your work together. And a lot of times we find really interesting ways, we're working in the same country, we can work with the training, so throughout my day, my everyday work, I oftentimes will have meetings with other organizations that are similar. And then I also get the chance to learn. So I get the chance to go to a webinar or a learning session. And then I take that information back to my organization and I say, this is how we could do better. This is how we can improve. So I'm very much focused on labor rights right now, which I'm thrilled to say is working out quite well. I saw there was a question in the chat box about internships. I don't know if we're going there now, or I could just make a quick comment on that.
Yeah, well, you could, but we're eventually going to come to the questions and also.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll wait.
Okay. Thank you so much. And so I'll ask you guys one more question and we can just go to the question. So if you have questions, you can just put it on the chat box and we will base those questions and they will answer them. So quickly, what 1 or 2 advice do you have for someone who wants to maybe get in the line of your career? What do you think what's that piece of advice that you provide for that individual looking to explore that area of your career? Okay, so I'll start from Sam again, Samantha, and then we'll go like that.
I would say it's going to sound a little cheesy maybe, but especially with people who are just starting their careers, the world, we all need big, beautiful, bold ideas. There's always going to be reasons people tell you, you should go a different path, or, you need to be realistic. But if we have people who, especially for social causes, for education, for healthcare, for labor rights, if you have a beautiful idea, or if you know of an organization you really support the idea they're going for, don't be shy. Your view, your perspective, even if you think you're young and starting out, it can be super helpful to have these fresh ideas. So if you have a big, beautiful idea, test it out, listen to people. Don't think you know everything. I don't know everything. You don't know everything. Listen to people. Collins was just talking about listening to communities, and it's so important. Audrey was talking about listening to business and their needs. Really listen, make your idea better if you have somebody else's idea, but really try to be bold. And, that's what we need, is people who are change makers.
Thank you so much, Audrey.
Okay, I've already said it, and as I used to, I will repeat it again and again and again. Sustainability, I really think is one of the challenge of our generation, and I deeply believe we cannot afford to miss it. So I also like to point out that the good news is that everything is still possible, but the most and only requirement is that each of us decide to adopt more sustainable consumption patterns today. So one piece of advice I would like us to remember at the end of this session is that each of us here today, just look around you, whatever you are involved in today, try your best to give it a green touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Collins and then Mike.
Thank you. I think my colleagues have said it all. I'm thinking of something, but I'll add on what they have said, that how you can turn your passion into community impact across the board. And I'll give an example, like even when you talk about like climate change, it's like a whole world, but the actual thing that now it's very common for developing countries, they are now looking at what are these innovative ideas that young people are coming with to solve issues or problems at the very local level, whether it's in the communities, whether it's in the companies, whether it's along the value chain of production. So what is this innovative idea? So first thing is research. Be somebody who likes to just read information, understand the trends, be able to know what's happening, try to come up with something new, because in any way it's going to be linked to a particular process or a particular line of industry. And I could give an example, like we are working with the communities in the rural area in the renewable energy. Now, when we go into like the off-grid electricity, people want like, what are these renewable energy technologies that people can develop to solve a problem? So for me, I'll say that research, innovate, and the innovation could simply be a very small idea in your neighborhood. I think it's Vihan who mentioned about the advocacy and action. I like that concept. That first, what they did was to the local support. So if people are able to, support an idea locally, you never know who is watching that, and that could be now a path for your career or your dream. So one of my friends said, don't fear to drop your idea out there, because you never know who might be watching. collaborate, capitalize on collaboration. If in most cases, maybe your solution could be in climate, but the idea can actually be applied even in health. I'm just giving that example. So in most cases, what I've discovered is that if you work with somebody who's not in your line of career, so if you're in science, you look for somebody who is in the humanities, both minds, you support each other and you're able to deliver something sustainable. So thank you so much.
Yes, over to you, Mike.
Sorry.
Shall I go on?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously I agree with everything that was said, but I think I want to check in with like two statements that are kind of contradicting, or at least I remember that I thought that's so contradicting to me, and I'm overwhelmed by it, still being a student, trying to figure out where I should go, what I should do, what is expected of me, what do I want, what can I do? And often you feel this sense of, well, I don't know what I can, I don't know what I want. And this, what I mean is this contradiction of like, okay, go big, think bold, and you are the change maker, you make the world your oyster, whatever. And on the other hand, you have this thing of like, think locally, what can you do in your own surrounding? And then it's this like, yeah, but it should be big, shouldn't it? And no, this is so small here, like my little hub. And what helped for me was really this remembering what I actually like to do is often, obviously, not all the time, but sometimes what you're good at is also what brings you joy and fun. And that finding your path doesn't have to be like, okay, push through something and it's going to be hard and you have to work hard. If it's something that you really like to do and you might do it already, then just go with it. Do what is like feeling good, because in the end you might have, at least it was for me, and I feel like with the other speakers too, you maybe later and only later have this point of like, this is something that I've been doing all along. And now it makes sense because I might have just met somebody or found an institution, found a spot where this is super helpful. And so if you already have great ideas, big ideas of how we can change the world, please go for it and pose it. But if you are a person who thinks like, but I really just like knitting and that's it, then maybe just go for this, and it will in the end turn out into something bigger because somebody will spot you, or you never know what will happen. And I think that's also again my topic with the connections and building relationships. For me, it really helped to talk to others, talk to people that can potentially become mentors over just a short time, maybe just for over one conversation. But sometimes you have people around you that can be from your friends group, from your parents' friends group, from your neighborhood. If you study, a teacher, a professor later on, wherever you meet somebody. For me, it's the super old friend of my mom. She took care of me when I was a baby because my mom was fed up with me sometimes. And until today, she's like this. She gives me feedback and asks tricky questions that really led me to realizing things for me and solving things for me, and also provoking me to go extra miles at some point. But this would be my advice, to listen to the people that you have around you that see your potential, not the ones who are like, oh, you stay here, you can't do it, not that one, but the person who is asking you a question where you feel maybe intimidated and like, but are you sure? But where you feel at home, where you feel like they can push you and support you. And this can also be in the sense of just giving you the self-esteem to believe in yourself and in your ideas. And try and fail is part of the game.
Yeah, thank you so much for your wonderful perspectives and for sharing your experiences. And just before I hand it over to Amanda, because I know that our time is fast spent, I'd like to just throw the question to Nick and Samantha about the question that was asked on the chat box about whether you know or are aware of any internship opportunities for international students. And if you could share, yeah. Okay, Samantha.
My answer, is very helpful for me, and I hope it's not annoying or like seen as not answering. But what I've done to get internships successfully is I've approached organizations even when they weren't advertising internships. So there was this like amazing shop selling like handmade things from all over the world. Coming from anyway, they worked with artisans all over the world. I thought they were amazing. I could learn from them. And my mom said, oh, why don't you ask them for an internship? Or she said, you know, there's a congresswoman and their office is nearby and you could learn about politics. And I approached them. And I think what it does is it shows your interest, you know, and I have my own issues with unpaid internships. I mean, these I think is, you know, it puts people who already have advantages further ahead. But if you're willing to do it, they see you as, you know, not very expensive labor, a learning opportunity. It makes them feel good, you know, that they're helping a student, usually if you're going to work for, you know, somebody who's really great. And just be very clear why you think they're interesting. And then also, you know, what skills you have. Oh, I love to write, you know, I'd be really interested to work on this project. Sure, you've done a little bit of research, but I really think like, and it's not just about how many applications you put in, it's about like connecting with the people at the organization. Specifically for the United Nations where I worked, they needed people who are a little bit older than the people on this call, but they do have programs for younger people. But I would say instead of there's this big black hole of the United Nations where you can send all your applications, instead go to each individual part of the organization, you know, find the email address of somebody who wrote something you think is super interesting and write to them, or go to each individual website, but not these things where you feel like a million people are going to apply. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I'm sure it is helpful. Unfortunately, we won't be able to take Mike's response. Maybe we could just
sorry
that box because of time. So Amanda, thank you so much once again for giving us your perspective and your experience in your different fields. It's been really awesome getting to know and also to understand your work, and I'm sure that the students enjoy it. So on that note, I'll hand over to Amanda to lead us to the breakout session. Over to you, Amanda.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to explain a bit about what we're going to be doing next. So first of all, thank you all to our wonderful panelists for sharing their insights about their careers. We were very happy to hear from you. So the idea of the breakout sessions is we will have around 30 minutes to talk to our expert panelists, and we will also be joined by a variety of other panelists as well in the separate breakout rooms. So the idea is that you will be able to choose which breakout room to go to, as well as change breakout rooms based on which topics that you are interested in. So the first breakout room will be broadly on engineering, technology, and energy. And Audrey will be in that room, as well as Ahmed. He's another person that will be joining to talk about his experience. The next breakout room will be broadly on diversity, equity, inclusion, and gender. And that room will have Nike as well as another panelist, Abigail. They will be together in that room. The third room will be on the environment. Collins will be there as well as Jawad, one of our other speakers. And the last room will be generally on arts and sustainability for Samantha will be in that room, joined by one of our project officers as well. So I will be setting up those rooms momentarily, and I will just pass it off to Elizabeth to give you some information about tomorrow while I'm setting up those rooms.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amanda. And again, thank you so much to all our speakers and panelists. It was a very, very informative session, and I think everybody definitely learned a lot. Lots of good key takeaways as well. And so yes, we just, while Amanda's setting up the breakout rooms, we'll just talk a little bit about tomorrow as well. We have a different session, same time as today, so 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern time as well. And this is where we've had some students from our Global Schools program and from other schools as well submit their work around the work that they've done with the SDGs in a very creative format. So we're going to have some presentations, we'll have some artwork, we'll have poems, and they'll be able to showcase their work and how they've had a local impact or a broader community impact as well. And then as well, additionally, we can have individuals just join, listen in, and see the presentations for tomorrow. And then at the end of the session, we'll also have a little bit of a networking opportunity as well. And so that we've posted the link here as well, but we'll probably repost it again in case anybody would like to join for tomorrow's session as well. Wonderful. And we just wanted to take one moment also to just take a group picture with everybody. So if all the panelists could put their cameras back on really quickly. This is recorded, so we'll probably take a screenshot of the recording, but that way we can all pose as well and just take one final photo. Wonderful. Okay. Let me just change the view. Okay, perfect. Okay, wonderful. We'll all pose in 3, 2, 1. Great. Awesome. Thank you so much. And as Amanda mentioned, yeah, so we'll be going into the breakout sessions now. You can jump between the different breakout rooms depending on the topic that you'd like to listen in on, or the specific panelist or speaker you'd like to ask questions to. So once we've done that, we'll they'll be open and you'll be able to click in to jump into one of those breakout rooms.
Okay, I believe the breakout rooms are open and you should be able to see the 4 different breakout rooms. So please feel free to join. You can also click leave, and then that will take you back to the main room, and you are welcome to join a different breakout room as well. We'll come back together about 1/2 past, but also please feel free to use this as your own time to talk to our panelists. So please feel free to join the breakout rooms. And let me know if you have any technical difficulties. Hi, everyone. Just to reiterate, you all have the option to join a breakout room yourself. You're allowed to go down to the breakout rooms on the bottom panel and choose which topic you are most interested in. We have engineering, tech, and energy. We have DIE and gender. We have the environment, and we have arts and sustainability. You can also stay in one room for 5 minutes, and then you can select leave, and then you can come back and choose another room to talk to another panelists. So you have to initiate on your side joining the rooms. And please let me know if you need assistance. So to join the breakout rooms, if you're on a desktop or computer, you will see on the very bottom panel, there's a tab that says More. If you click on that, you can see the breakout rooms. It does look a bit different on my side as the host of the meeting, but I believe that is where it is located if you go to the 3 dots and More and Breakout Rooms. If you need help joining a breakout room, you can also directly message me and I can assign you as well. I will work on that. For those of you that I just let in from the waiting room, just to reiterate, we are having breakout rooms right now with the different topics that we just discussed in the career session. If you go to the bottom panel, you can see the topics for the breakout rooms. Please feel free to join one of them. You can also leave the room and join another topic.
I had a problem with electricity here.
Is there a room that you would like to join?
Just put me anywhere, it's okay. I will adapt myself.
Okay, I will assign you. So I assigned you, you have to click accept so you can join the breakout room.